Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here. I was just about to hit record and I noticed, let's see if I can point to it because I'm backwards here. That little ball of yarn I knocked over apparently at some point, or maybe somebody else. I had like a stack and they're like rolling all over the place. It's fine. We'll fix it later. I hope you're having a lovely day. I am so excited to be chatting with Nicky of Avery Lane Creations. I will confess, I don't know her super well, but I've been following her on Instagram for a while, and I feel like we have very similar color tastes and senses of humor. So I'm super excited to get to know more about her and share all of her gorgeous work with you today. So let's welcome her.
Hey,
Hello.
y'all. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to get to chat with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good.
Oh, good. How's the
Yeah.
weather by you?
Ugh, it is not nice. And I think like I woke up with a terrible headache. I get those like weather change migraines, and it looks just really gloomy, like it could rain at any time. So yeah.
Uh, Same here.
Yeah.
Not with the headaches, thankfully. But yes, it's just like could rain at some point, going to be gloomy and miserable all day.
Exactly, exactly. But I know that the summer's coming and we won't have very much rain and it'll just be hot and humid. So I'm even trying to enjoy the rainy days. So
Yes, so true. The flowers and all the things that will eventually come up and bloom and be beautiful
yes.
need
Yeah.
that rain to get going.
Mhm.
So we had snow on Monday.
That is crazy.
I
Ugh.
am feeling very over the snow. Every time
Mhm.
they predict snow, I say things like, it's fine, it won't happen.
Yep.
And then I'm shocked when we're getting a lot of it overnight. So I'm shocked when I open the windows in the morning and oh, yes, there is actually snow here.
Mother Nature is crazy.
It sure is. It sure is.
Uh,
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, hobbies you have outside of yarn, your family, where you live, anything you want to share.
All right. So it doesn't sound like it, but I am originally from Northern Illinois and I moved south to Mississippi when I was 12. And so that's where the accent came from. And like the first word that I picked up on was y'all. So you'll hear me say y'all a lot. It's just so much easier to say. Um, so, um, so I was quite confused in my teenage years, wasn't really sure how to say things because I'm like, okay, is that actually how you say it? Or so it was really, really interesting. So most of my family still lives in Northern Illinois. But my mom and my brother live in Phoenix, Arizona.
Hmm.
And then I live here in Mississippi with my husband. So I have no family around me, which is it's sad, but it makes the time that we have together even more precious. And I'm blessed to have my husband and his amazing family. So I don't feel quite as lonely. But all of my vacations are usually centered around going and seeing and visiting family. So I get to travel a lot. So that's the upside of not living your family. So,
I totally understand that.
yeah.
The first 16 years of marriage, my husband and I lived far from family, including in Tucson.
Oh, okay.
So just south of your family. And yeah, it's just kind of something you get used to, not
It
having
is.
your immediate family to lean on and depend on. And I really felt like it gave us a really strong foundation of our marriage because it was just the two of us.
Yep. Yep. You have
We
no
had to
choice
figure
but to be
it
friends.
out.
Yep. I understand. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Northern Illinois, east or west?
West. A
Okay.
little bitty town called Stockton. It's between like Freeport and Galena or
Okay.
Rockford and Galena. Usually those are the
Mhm,
bigger
mhm.
cities.
I have
It's
heard
like
of those.
it's one of those little small like dairy cornfield towns. Like if you blink, you're gonna miss it.
Yes.
Yeah.
My in-laws used to live in Madison, and so we used to
Okay.
drive from Ohio up through Rockport into Wisconsin to visit my in-laws. So I have
Okay.
an idea of where that is. Generally, I'm very bad with geography. So
Same. I'm like,
I've been
okay,
there.
east or west. I was like, ah, oh
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was interviewing somebody else and I told them, oh, Detroit, like you're just right across the lake because we're really close to Lake Michigan, across the lake, and then also across the entire state of Michigan.
Yeah.
Detroit is not on my side. I
Oh,
wish
so
it
funny.
was because I have people
Mhm.
I'd like to visit there, but it's not.
That is
And I'm very
so
bad at
funny.
geography.
Yeah, same. Oh
Oh
goodness.
goodness, I love it. So tell us, how did you start your maker journey? Where did you learn your craft? How old were you ish? I don't remember my exact age.
So the first time I was interested in crocheting, I don't know how old I was. I'm guessing like 7 or 8. My grandma Gertie was a crocheter and a knitter, and I just remember being mesmerized whenever I would watch her. And she made like the entire family these slippers, and they were all one size and they fit the men in the family. So I just remember like as a kid, those slippers, like putting them on, and I had like linoleum floor in my bedroom, and my brother and I would just like run and slide with those, and they were way too big. Um, and so just like growing up and just like cherishing those little things. And she used to have those like plastic dolls, and she would crochet like the entire dress and the hat and the umbrella, and she had them on her beds in her house. So I kind of had this obsession with crochet since I was a kid. And I remember learning how to do a slip knot and how to do a chain. And then that was it. My brain would just shut off. I could make a chain from here to China, but going back through, it just wasn't clicking for me. So, like kids, our attention span, I was just like, okay, well, that was fun for a minute and now I'm done. Um, and then I tried again, like in my early 20s, and I'm just like, it's just not clicking for me. And it was like before the YouTube days. Um, so then in 2015, I was at a family gathering, and my Aunt Sue was just over on the couch, just among the whole entire family. And she was just crocheting away. And she kept us all flush with washcloths. That's her specialty. And I love doing the dishes with crocheted washcloths because I mean, I don't really love doing dishes, but having like a pretty washcloth that was made with love, it seemed to just make it a little better. So I was watching her and I was just like, man, I have got to learn. I've got to learn. I'm going to learn. Like, I was just like, I'm doing it. And then a couple months later, they came to visit me, and she's left-handed though, and I'm right-handed. So I had heard that if you sit across from each other, it makes more sense. So I'm like sitting across from her, but I wanted to be like over her shoulder looking.
Mhm.
So I kind of grasp a little bit more of the concept there. And then, you know what? I started Googling. It's like I got my crochet degree from the University of Google and the University of YouTube. Um, but what I learned was I kept trying to do the same thing. I would use worsted weight yarn and a little bitty crochet hook, and it was like I was all fumble fingers. So finally, I'm like, okay, I have been trying off and on for probably 20 years to try to learn to crochet. So I'm going to try it differently. I went and I got like the thickest yarn I could find at Walmart and a big old hook. And I'm like, I'm going to learn today. So then I got on YouTube and just started trying. But I'm like, everybody wants you to either do like a granny square, or they want you to do a swatch and like do a bunch of single crochets, do a bunch of double crochets. And I'm like, I don't have the attention span for this. So what I decided is I was going to decide right then what I wanted my finished product to be. And I was like, well, I want to make a baby blanket. So that's what I did. I learned exactly what I needed to do, and I made a huge baby blanket in all single crochets. Do not recommend. Half of a star. Don't do it. Um, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I had used that Bernat baby blanket yarn,
Mhm.
and I was so proud of myself when I got that baby blanket done. And I'm so thankful I did not take a picture, because when I laid it out, it was trying to be a triangle but wasn't fully committed. And I'm like, I don't even know what I did. And I had made it for a friend that was pregnant. And she was just like, "Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you so much." I ended up frogging the whole entire thing because I was like, "No." So I made the baby blanket twice with all single crochet stitches. So then I was like, okay, I do not like the single crochet stitch anymore. What do I want to learn next? So that's kind of how I learned to crochet is I would be like, okay, what do I want to make? What do I need to learn just to get this done? Instead of going down that rabbit hole of trying to like know everything and burning myself out. So that's what finally clicked for me.
I I think you just gave so much great advice for people who want to learn how to crochet right there. When I started learning how to knit, and my mother taught me, and this also was before YouTube, and she and I, one of the very big differences between her and I is I love a good bulky knit hat. She would much rather knit some fingering weight socks.
Oh, yeah.
And so she got me these little tiny needles and like maybe a DK weight yarn. And it's like everything is so small then. Like, how do you even see these stitches when they're so tiny?
Yes.
I highly recommend when people start, get a, like you said, a big fat crochet hook, a bulky yarn, and then everything's just bigger. You
It
can see it
is.
so much better.
Yes, yes. And your stitches may not be as defined, but the important part is getting the motion down and just learning how to do the stitches and then you can, go down from there. But I think that was the turning point for me. That was just,
Mhm.
and I still love bulky weight yarn. I think it's my favorite. So,
Yeah. The other thing that I think that is great advice is like just start with one stitch, work that stitch for a while, and then move on. The reality of yarn craft is there are endless possibilities. I
yes.
mean, so many combinations of stitches that you can do that you're just not going to master all of them. So why
No.
try before you actually move on to making
Yeah,
something?
because it really can be overwhelming. It really can. So that was what I think that was what I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna make I have an idea, I'm gonna make it. And then you get that not instant gratification because it took forever, but you get that like, wow, look at what I just made. And it just gives you that burst to try to be brave and try new things. So
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And I love it when people talk about their very first projects because it's easy to see, to go on like Instagram and see all the people with their beautifulness and their perfect stitches and think like that is how my first project will be,
Yes.
when in
Mhm.
reality everyone's first project was a mess.
Yep. A mess, yeah. And that's like, I said earlier that I'm glad I didn't have a picture, but part of me wishes that I did because I really think that in order and to encourage other people that they may look at you and think, "Wow, she just has it together," and like, just I want to be like that. But we all start somewhere. We just may not have the pictures to prove it. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, and even as I work, I'll be real honest. I'm a bit of a slow learner, which makes me an excellent teacher, but makes picking up new things a little more challenging. And so I I start real slow when I
Yeah.
learn new stitches. And
Mhm.
and the first time I make some new stitches, they do not look great. And it takes like a real thinking through on my end of like, oh, I need to raise that loop a little more,
Yeah.
or I need to, it just takes a little more thinking through. And so, even if you're an experienced crocheter, I think a lot of people don't move past some of those basic stitches because it almost feels like stepping backwards when you pick up a
Mhm.
more complicated stitch and think, that doesn't look good. And I don't want things to not look good again.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's all part of the process.
It really is. It really is. And that was the same thing for me is my brain works differently. And like you said, I'm a slow learner and I was trying to learn from like a book and it just was not clicking or reading, like trying to read something and learn it. I am such a visual person. I can go and watch a video and then read it and it'll click for me. But
Yes.
um but just I think just knowing yourself and knowing how your brain works, and that just because that worked for somebody, be open to that doesn't work for me, but how can I? Don't say, well, I can't do it because that doesn't work. But like, okay, how can I make this work for me? How can I learn? So that was really important for me, was to just have a lot of self-love when I was learning, and very determined that I wasn't going to give up. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think you landed on another really good point there, and that's you've got to know your learning style.
Mhm.
When I was teaching, several of the other staff members decided they wanted to learn how to knit or crochet. And so I taught them how to do it. And some of them were absolutely visual learners. They went on YouTube, they found videos they could watch over and over again, and they were good to go. I had one friend who it blew my mind because I too am a visual learner. And to me, just the way my brain works, it's like it just makes sense for me to see
Mhm.
what's going on. But she learns best from books, and she got a book and sat down and like picked it up from the book so quickly. I
Wow.
was amazed. But if she would have been very frustrated if she had tried to use my learning style to
Yeah.
learn. And so you really have to, I agree, try it out and see, are you a person who works best by watching that YouTube video over and over again? Is it better for you to be in person with someone so they can look and say, oh, you're grabbing the yarn wrong, or you're twisting
Yes.
this way, or like loosen up your tension a little bit?
Yeah.
Or is picking up a book and reading the instructions what works best for you? Because it's really different for everybody.
It really is. It really is. So, and just keeping an open mind about it. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I will say, and I'm sure you agree to this as someone who also started pre-YouTube. We are very lucky to have all the options,
oh my goodness,
because
yes,
I had the um not animations, but the drawings in the book of what the stitches look like and
yes,
where you put your hook or
yeah.
your needle in. And I was always like, I'm not sure mine quite looks like that.
I know. I'm like trying to move the book. Like, okay, can I? If I could just see this at a different angle, like moving it sideways. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Have have do you knit?
I do. I taught myself to knit last August.
Oh,
And it was another one of those things. Like I had made up my mind, well, I can't knit. There's no way I can, it was like I hold two needles and not hold my yarn. And but again, YouTube,
mhm,
a friend of mine had told me to try continental style. And that
mhm.
is what worked for me. And again, I went down that same road as I did with crocheting. Like I could cast on like a champ. I mean, I had so much fun casting on, but then going to the next part, it just was not working for me. So I found some great YouTube tutorials, and is it Very Pink Knits that does the slow motion and like the overhead? I think that's her name, but that's what helped me more than anything, was being able to watch somebody in slow motion. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to get this. And I'm now obsessed with knitting. But I will say, I have to break up a knit project with a crochet project because I want to feel smart again. It's like, knitting, I'm just like, I don't know. And then I'm like, okay, I need to feel smart for a moment. So I'll go back to like my crochet project. Oh, goodness.
I love to have well, first of all, I do not, my brain does, it has tried so hard, but it does not wrap around one project at a time.
Same. Yeah.
I have many projects, um, and they're all in different states and places, and they're all of different sizes. I love to have a good big project that feels like, I've accomplished something large. I
Yeah.
like to have a small project that I can take on the go for when I need to, like, I am a firm believer that if I am prepared, I will never have to wait anywhere.
Yep.
So I always take a project with me, and then it's like I never have time to make it, but that one time I leave the project at home, it's like I'm sitting uh, by the train tracks, and that train is like inching along, and I'm like, I could be getting stitches done.
I know, and I'm just like, I don't even know what to do with my hands when I'm waiting. Like, I just
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
same. So I have lots of projects going on, and I do like switching between knitting and crochet. I think it uses my brain a little differently.
Mhm.
It uses my hands a little differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love to switch back and forth.
I'm the same way. Like, so I always say I want at least 3 projects going. I want one that challenges me. I want one that is one of those instant gratification ones, and then I want a selfish make. Like, I want something that I'm making for me that's not like a design, because I feel like with crochet, it's really become business. Like, I love it, don't get me wrong, but I always feel like when I sit down to crochet, I'm like, "Okay, so I'm gonna use this for my blog, or I'm gonna use this is gonna be a new pattern," or there's always something that I'm doing, like, a reason. Um, and so with knitting, I'm just like, that's for me. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not looking to be I may be a designer. I have learned never say never. Like, I may eventually become, a knit designer, but right now, like, that's like my selfish. Like, it's just
Mhm.
for me. I have no reason to like try to design something. And so that's like my 3 things. I always have to have 3 whips at least, but usually it's more.
Yes, I totally agree. That I started off designing knitting because that's where I was most confident.
Wow.
But I was talking to Emily of Hooked Hazel like years ago, and I had noticed that she knit and crocheted, and she was doing, she had done a fairly equal amount of patterns, and she had really shifted to just doing publishing crochet patterns. And so I just said, like, just out of curiosity, like, can you tell me, like, was that an intentional choice? Did you, is it just kind of how it's happened? And she said, I just really found that I needed to keep some of the craft just for me, that there
Hmm.
wasn't the pressure to make it be anything, that I could pick up other people's patterns and not feel like I should be working on
Yes.
productivity for myself. And when we originally had that conversation, I thought, well, that's interesting, and I didn't think much of it. And I have slowly progressed in that direction too. I just really like having knitting be something that is just purely for me.
Yes. It's I think it's what keeps our creativity flowing, because
Mhm.
there needs to be a way that we can turn business mode off. And I think that was really hard for me, especially when I left my full-time job to come home and work my business full time. Was I was like, how do you turn this off? Like, I was working just like I was back to working 16, 18-hour days again. And I'm like, I've got to find a way to switch it off. And I really think that when I started knitting, that's when I was just like, okay, in the evenings, like, this was my thing. And it gave me like my energy back. And then it's like the next day I would just have this like creative flow. And I know that sounds so woo woo, but really it was just like I could just relax, turn everything
Mhm.
off. And then the
Mhm.
next morning I just came back better. So, yeah.
It is not creative woo woo, it is science. Our brains need time to shut off and process the information they have already taken in and not be receiving more information. And that relaxation and creativity has been, and downtime for our brains has been scientifically proven to make people more creative.
Isn't that amazing? I know
So,
whenever I would go on vacation, I would whip out so many designs. I remember, I don't even know how many years ago, but my mom had foot surgery and I went out and stayed a week with her. And I think I ended up designing like 3 or 4 patterns during that time. I was like, this is crazy. She's like, I would like a pair of fingerless gloves. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I don't even know who I am right now. Usually I'm like gonna overthink it for a month and then I'm gonna like second guess myself. And then I was just like, let me see your hand. I'm just like, here you go. Never made a fingerless glove before. I was just so relaxed and I'm just like, here you go. She was like, oh my goodness. So yeah,
yep.
pretty neat.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. So, tell us about your business name. How did it come about? Were you like me, and did you overthink it a bunch, or
Oh
was
my
it like a super
goodness.
easy journey?
Yes, yes. So I have developed this thing where don't get stuck with the small stuff. Like when you feel that dream or that calling to start your business or to do something, don't let the little things trip you up. And I was letting the little things trip me up. I was just like, I
Mhm.
had all these cutesy names, and then I'm like, then I would go to Google and I'm like, somebody already has it.
Yeah.
And so I just like did this brain dump on this piece of paper. And I just was like, all of the ideas that I had. And at the time, I told myself that, oh, I'll never be a crochet designer. I barely know how to make patterns or, read patterns. Um, so so anyways, I just like put all of this stuff down. So I wasn't going to do like designs and things like that. Well, my last name is Avery, and my husband and I have a home on some acreage, and our lane is like a fourth of a mile long. It's ridiculous. And then the road that we actually live on is Avery Road because his grandparents like hand cleared all this land out here. And at one point, I think the family owned most of the land. So I was just like, what about Avery Lane? And then I'm just like Avery Lane Creation. So did I love it? No. I it's always been one of those things like I can change it later. I can change it later. But I do like it now. So that's just kind of how it I had all these cutesy names and like my friend Danielle from a Naughty Habit Designs. I was like, I want a cute name like hers.
Mhm.
And I just couldn't find something. And finally I was like, Avery Lynn Creations, here we are. So
I confess, I envy those people who have those kind of like punny names that you just look at
yeah.
it and you chuckle a little bit. But when it came to coming up with my own name, I was like, nope. Everyone is smarter than you, Sarah. They've already done it.
Yeah.
Just throw in the towel
Yep.
and pick something that's not a pun. It's fine.
Yep. The
I
same
love that
with my oh, sorry, go ahead.
I love that there's so much family history behind it, though. That's really
Me
neat.
too. Me too. I'm such a sentimental person. So yeah, so it does have a lot of meaning to us. So yeah.
So you said when you picked your name, you had no intentions of becoming a designer. Did you start with this name just as like uh, an Instagram to like share your work, or did you start off selling finished products?
I did start off selling finished products. So I started out on Facebook before Instagram because Instagram just seemed confusing to me. Like, you know how you just make up your mind about something? Like,
Mhm.
so I started on Facebook, and you know how it is. Like when you start a new hobby, like you go to Facebook and you start looking and you join every single group that there is. So I was like, I have nobody around me that I knew that crocheted. All of my nickname at work was Granny. Like none of my friends understood. So I was just like, we are such we are like we're created for community. So it's like I need somebody that gets me because my husband is tired of like, yes, honey, that's great. Don't know what you're making, but okay. You know what I mean? So I was like, I need to find people. And so I would go in crochet groups and meet people, but that was it. Like you would have to go into that group to find these people. And then two, like I don't do drama, I don't do negativity. And I would keep getting in trouble for posting things when my heart was in the right place, but I didn't realize that like I guess you couldn't, people would be like, "Hey, where'd you get that pattern?" I was like, "Oh, it's so and so. Here's the link." And they're like, next thing you know, I'm blocked from all these groups and I was just
Mhm.
like, "Ah, I want friends." So I was like, "You know what? I'm going to start a business page on Facebook so I can have my friends come over here and I can control the environment because there's so much negativity in the world. And I just wanted, for me, crochet was therapy. And I wanted to create a space that was happy, uplifting, inspiring, encouraging, and just kind. So I was like, but I need a business name. So that's how, and then at that point, I decided that I would sell my finished make. So that I did kind of start slowly turning it into a business. But for me, it started out with a community. Like this is the space that I needed. And I was like, you know what? I bet other people need this too. So
I
yeah.
love it. So how did that progress? Did you spend a lot of time selling finished items? Did you mostly do it online? Did you do craft shows and stuff?
I did not do craft shows because I live in the sticks. And, craft shows,
Sure.
we live a good 10 minutes from town. And then the town that we live in doesn't really have stuff like that. So it's like a good hour drive to anything like that. And with my full time job, and I just didn't have the time. So I did sell online. But let me just tell you, it was I got burned out. I was not I was selling myself short. I was pricing things too cheaply,
Mhm.
and the turning point for me was when I made this unicorn. I don't even remember whose pattern it was, but um I tend to do my own thing. Like I'm kind of a rebel crocheter is what I like to say. And it was made with worsted weight yarn. I'm like, I'm not gonna make a unicorn with worsted weight yarn. So I went and got Bernat yarn and I did like all of these different colors and I made this unicorn and it was huge. So I gave it to our little cousin who loves stuffed animals and she just loved it. And then so many people were just like, I want one, I want one. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then I had this thing in my mind that like, I don't know, it was just like, well, I want people to be able to afford it. And
Mhm.
I want kids to have it. So I sold myself short, and let me tell you, I made, like, 20 I don't even remember anymore, but it was, like, 26 of them in, like, 25 weeks, and these things were massive, and they took forever, and you know what? I charged 30 or $35 for these things. Like, so, the very last unicorn, I'm like, "I'm never making one of these again," and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know how I'm gonna change my business from here, but I do know, like, I know myself enough that I don't like making the same thing over and over again, and I just felt like it was almost like I didn't have the joy from crochet anymore. So, it was at that point, like, I had to overthink it for a bit, but it was that was a turning point for me. Like, I was just like, "Mm-mm." So then I was like, "You know what? I think I'm gonna blog." I think I am going to teach others how to crochet and use my journey as an example for the people that, because I heard so many people say to me, like, I tried to crochet, my fingers just don't work, da 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 da. And I was like, you know what? There's not a lot of people out there encouraging people to kind of go against the grain and use the bulky weight and just, you know what? Yeah, you don't know what you're doing, but make a blanket or what do you want to make and make it. So I was like, I'm gonna start that. And so then that's kind of how my blog came about. And it's just, I feel like I have pivoted so many times in my business that I should be dizzy. So, yeah.
So is that when you moved? So did you start designing your own things to put on your blog then?
Um, I was still in that I'll never be a designer. I think I barely knew how to read crochet patterns at that point. Because I have ADHD. So being able to focus and, like, all of those letters, and it just seems so overwhelming.
Mhm.
So, I was just going to be, like, start with the basics, like how to chain and things like that for other people that couldn't read crochet patterns. But then, I had a friend that had a little girl, and they wanted a hat for her, and I wanted to use bulky weight yarn, and I searched high and low. You know how we do, Ravelry, Pinterest, Google, everywhere. And I couldn't like, I knew what I wanted in my head, and at that time and it could have just been my limited knowledge, but at that time, I felt like there wasn't enough bulky weight crochet patterns. So, I was like, "You know what? I know what I want. I'm just gonna do it." So, that was my first design. And then, um, I put that on my blog, and I had no idea what I was doing, and then I it just, like, it flew from there, like, I was just like, "Oh, I've got another idea." I was looking for a hat in worsted weight yarn, and I'm like, "Oh, I got another idea," and it just, like I don't know how it happened, but it just kinda snowballed, and it was like that, self-doubt comes up, it's like, "Girl, you just learned how to read crochet patterns, there's no way you could be a designer." And still, I feel like I'm a little bit different as a designer because if you've ever read one of my crochet patterns, like, what could take 1 word, I'm gonna use 4. Like, my Like, I really like, single crochet in the very first stitch. You know what I mean? When you could just say
Mhm,
SC. Like, it's just
mhm.
but I just went with what I had, and I went with what was comfortable for me, and I feel like by stepping into what makes you unique, you're gonna attract the right people to you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's the reason that there will never be too many designers is because everybody learns differently and everybody
Mhm.
has preferences like that. And while some people might look at your pattern and say, That's too cluttered, there's so many words," someone else is going to look at it and be like, finally, it
Yes,
makes sense to me.
yeah.
And so, yeah, that's great. I
I
love it.
think that's my trouble with knit patterns because I'm like, there needs to be more words on here. Like, I need this to be longer. Oh, goodness.
Yes, yeah, it's very concise in the
Yeah.
knitting world. I think that has to do a lot with the fact that, like, once you've got your stitches on your needle, like, you're working with those stitches
Mhm.
and in a pretty linear fashion,
Yeah.
where when it comes to crochet, you could go
Yes.
in any direction at any time.
Yes. So true. So true. Yep.
I love it. So when did you start dyeing yarn?
It was December of 2019, and, um, I had always been interested in hand-dyed yarn because I love colorful yarn, and I would get, store-bought yarn. And I'm like, "Oh, I wish this color was actually after this color." Or, "Man, this would be gorgeous if they took this color out and put this color in." And I didn't realize it at the time. And also I was a yarn snob starting out. Like, if it doesn't feel good to me, I'm not using it. Like, I cannot tell you how much yarn I have gifted. I have tried, and I just cannot do it. So, but I have super sensitive skin. So I was just like, well, I'm allergic to wool. I can never, I just can't do it. But I started researching it and what is her name? It's on the tip of my tongue. Ashley from Montana Crochet. I
Mhm.
was in a giveaway with her and after the giveaway, I was like, "Hey, I think I can't remember what I hit on Instagram, but I was like, "Would you be interested in contributing to my giveaway?" So she's like, "Yeah, yeah." And she threw a hank of yarn in a bag and sent it to me. So curious me, I opened it up and I'm like touching it and I'm feeling it and seeing if like I would be allergic to it. And I wasn't. And so then in my research, I realized that like superwash wools are actually hypoallergenic. So if you're allergic to wool, there is a very, very little chance that you're gonna be allergic to superwash, and usually, if you have an allergy to it, it's something that was washed with from the dyer. So it was that point that I was like, "That's it. I'm gonna try it." And it was really just for me, like, I just wanted pretty yarn. So, I tried it, and, the very first time I tried it, I literally was watching, like, a YouTube video, and I'm just, like, pouring color on the yarn, and then, I had said earlier that, I created a community on my business Facebook page. So then I started going live and I'm like, hey, y'all, I'm dyeing yarn. I have no idea what I'm doing, but let's have fun. So I would go live and I would dye yarn and I was doing it all the time and try new things. And then I would let people be like, oh, what color should I use next? And they would pick out colors. And then I had people say, I want to buy this. And I'm like, what? I don't want to part with it. And then finally, like, I just feel like we all got really close as friends. And then finally, I'm like, okay, I will part with it, but I have no idea how to sell it. And they're like, put it in your Etsy shop. And they're like, and charge this. And I'm like, what? And it just kind of went from there. But I had told myself that I wasn't going to turn this hobby into a business, that this was going to be for me. And it just grew from there. So,
I'm
yeah.
so glad you did. I when I first got on Instagram, I saw a lot of um people that I felt like a lot of the kind of the big people were doing lots of cream and gray and like that kind of like I'm trying to think of the word, like the terracotta
Yeah.
colors. And
Mhm.
I agree that that's like a gorgeous color
It is,
palette, but
yeah.
also like I need all the colors. I
Mhm.
need it bright, I need it jewel toned, I need
Yes.
it, the more saturated the better. And so I every time I look at a skein of your yarn, I'm like, "Ooh, that's
Oh,
beautiful."
thank you. What
So I'm so glad you are sharing it.
Well, thank you. And what really started it for me too was I couldn't find worsted weight hand-dyed yarn.
Mhm.
And when I found somebody that had it, they would sell out before I could get it, and I was so frustrated. And, not even knowing anything about the indie dyer world, I was just like, "I don't understand why these people wanna use DK and sock weight." Like, "No, I want worsted weight. I'm a crocheter." And I didn't realize that, like, hand-dyed yarn was big in the knitting world and
Mhm.
not so much in the crochet world. So, when people realized that I was using worsted weight yarn, that was like they were just like, "I can't find anybody that has worsted weight yarn." So, I feel like I filled a gap in my market that I didn't even know. I just used what my experience was as a buyer. Like, "I wanna give you my money. Can you please dye some worsted weight yarn?" And then finally, I just got frustrated. I was like, "Yep, that's it. I'm doing it myself." So,
I love it. I love it.
yeah.
So, do you keep a skein of every colorway for yourself? Because I think I would have to.
I used to try, um, and it's so funny, like, my very first, couple of months when I started my yarn club, I would as I was, like, labeling things and packing yarn club boxes, I would start a pile that was a me pile. I'm like, "Oh, I can't get rid of this one." And then the next thing you know, I had, like, 4 hanks of yarn to give to, like, 40 people, and I'm like, so I'd have to go back through, but I don't, just because as much as I love dyeing yarn, I love even more to see the joy it brings other people and seeing them make it and work and use it. And it's like there's no way I would be able to have the time to work with all of this yarn, but there are some that I'm just like, I can't part with this and I will stick it in my stash. And then it's like a couple of months I'll go through and I'll feel guilty. I'm like, oh, it's been sitting here. Maybe somebody else wants it. So it really just depends. It's like an internal war, but I try to keep like, it's like I pick my battles. I'm like, "Okay, I can let this one go," but I'm like, "Nope, can't let this one go." So,
That would be hard to
it
choose, I
is.
think.
It is.
Because I think a lot of times, I don't know, maybe not, because I do not dye yarn. That is one of those things that I have thought, like, especially when I first started out, and like I said, I saw a lot of people using really gorgeous, colors, but just not colors I wanted for myself. I thought, well, maybe I should figure out the yarn dye.
Yeah. Uh-oh, I think you froze.
Oh, are we
Oh,
back?
you're back.
Okay. Goodness sakes, I have no idea what that was. Um, yeah, I don't know. Ooh, maybe they're doing work on the internet
Oh, I hope
by my
not.
house. I hope not. Anyways, okay. Hopefully this won't we'll be fine.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I just decided I that was not a hobby I was going to pick up. So I'm always delighted to find yarn dyers who dye with bold
Yeah.
yarn
Oh,
instead.
no. Yeah. And, that was the thing too is, like, I feel like it's so important, especially when you're starting out, like, you're starting your business, is to be authentic to you because you're gonna attract the people to you, like, um, and and trends are great, but so many
Mhm,
times, especially when we're new, we, like, jump on a trend, but you don't
mhm,
realize that you were attracting people to you that like what you like, and you're jumping on this trend, and then it doesn't sell, and then you're like we tend to tie our self-worth up in our product, and then we go down that road of, like, "I'm terrible. I should have never tried this." And so when you're authentic to you, like, my thing I had to tell myself when I decided to turn it into a business was like, "Well, if nobody buys it, I'll keep it because I love it." And and then I very rarely dye neutrals because I haven't been drawn to neutrals, but
mhm.
then I get these ideas for neutral colorways, and I don't dye yarn for, like, a month because I'm like, "I don't wanna do neutrals," but anyways, it's so funny because when I dye neutrals, they don't sell as fast because most of my people don't they're drawn to the bright and the loud
Mhm.
colors, so
Yep. Yep. Like attracts like.
It does. It does. So,
I love it. So tell us, what was the last project you finished up? Yarn or design or just for fun?
it would be, I think it was the Brecken cowl. So I have an obsession with cowls, and I designed the Brecken cowl. It was a while back, and we are doing a crochet along in my yarn club for that. So I think that was the last thing that I finished. So it
That's
was
fun.
it was really fun. I love seeing other people's, especially when they're enjoying your something you designed, and then a lot of my yarn club members are using some of my hand dyed yarn. So I'm just like, oh my goodness, it has been so much fun.
I bet that sounds great. What's something you're working on right now?
I am working on this is so funny. I am working on a new design with sock weight yarn.
Oh,
I know. I was like, I'll never be able to crochet with sock weight yarn. It's too tiny. And then because of knitting, I've really grown to appreciate sock weight yarn. And so I'm working on a design. It's going to be a wrap, and I'm enjoying it, but I'll, like, crochet for, like, an hour, and then I'm like, "Wow, I should be halfway done," and I just finished a row.
yeah.
So it's definitely not one of those instant gratification projects, like, not even close.
No, I first crocheted with fingering weight yarn a few years ago, and I agree. One of the great things about crochet over knitting is that it can work up very quickly because you can get a
Yeah.
lot more height out of your stitches in crochet than you can
Mhm.
in knitting. Um, but the drape of a fingering weight yarn is just worth the extra time, I feel like.
It really is, like, I, was diehard worsted weight girl for a long time, and I made a shawl with it, and it was just so heavy and so bulky, and I'm
Mhm,
just like, I don't it just wasn't it was warm, and I'll use it as a blanket, but I'm just like, I just don't, um I think I want it lighter, and it was like you said, the drape, it was just kinda like blah.
mhm,
And then I tried some DK weight, and it's fabulous too, but like you said, like that sock weight, and it's just so soft. Like
mhm,
I encourage anybody that has like been like, no, sock weight, like just try it. You'll love it.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you. I always make assumptions that people are very similar to me. So, but I'm not going to make the assumption, but I'm a short person. And I feel like when you're very tall, the bigger, bulkier things, like you just have more space on your body for those to be a
Yes.
little more structured.
Mhm.
But when I'm going to make a giant shawl, like I only have a little bit of torso to wrap it around.
Same. Same. It looks like I'm wrapped up in a blanket. I'm not even 5 foot tall. So yes,
Okay.
I am short. Yeah.
And I
So
have just a couple inches on you. So
yeah. Just so
yes,
funny.
I like a good long and shallow shawl. And yeah, the lighter the yarn, the easier it is to get all wrapped up in it without being
Mhm.
like, and now I'm like just eyeballs out because
Yeah.
there's so much fabric there.
Exactly, and you're, like, scared it's gonna be dragging on the ground, and yeah, yep.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Oh my goodness. I love it. All right, I'm gonna throw some favorites at you.
Okay,
So no wrong answers, obviously. And if
okay,
you don't have an answer to something, that's cool too.
okay.
What is your favorite item to design?
I would have to say cowls. At first, it was hats, like, I was, like, whipping out beanies left and right, but now I'm gonna have to say cowls. I love wearing them. I love having something warm around my neck.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And a cowl, you put it on and it just stays put. Like
Yes,
with a
yeah.
shawl, sometimes like it comes unwrapped, and especially when my boys were little tiny, like I did not as we were trying to run out the door and I had to dress everyone, there was no time to wrap up in a shawl and make it look nice. You just plopped a cowl on over your head and good enough.
Yes, and I'm like a jeans and t-shirt
Mhm,
girl, or t-shirt and leggings, so I feel like with a cowl, it doesn't feel as like, if I were wearing jeans and a t-shirt with a shawl, I would feel awkward. I'm not saying that people can't pull it off, but I would just feel like, "This something's not right." So a cowl, I can just, like, throw that on, and,
mhm,
even, like, a long sleeve t-shirt, I feel like I just kind of dressed it up a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Where's your favorite place to work?
You talking about like sitting to crochet?
Mhm.
I would have to
I assume
say
you have to dye your yarn in a very specific place.
yes. I actually dye my yarn in my laundry room. When I designed our house, I had this like big space left over, and I was like, well, I don't want our master bathroom to be any bigger, and that I knew this space was going to be the laundry room. So the laundry room is like 10 foot by 8 foot. And it has like a sink and cabinets in there. Like it's really nice, which it doesn't feel like it's that big now. So that's actually where I started dyeing yarn because I knew I didn't want to be in my kitchen.
Mhm,
But I would have to say my favorite place if the weather is nice is on one of my porches. We have on the front and the back of our house, we have porches that go the entire length of our house and we have chairs out there. So I love sitting outside and just like being like we don't have any neighbors around us and we have like a lot of trees and it's just so peaceful. So I love being outside, but if I can't be outside, I want to be in my recliner.
I love it. That's great. It's like fate that you were going to dye yarn, that you had just had all that laundry room space to do it.
Yes, yes. Yep.
I love it. What is your favorite fiber to work with?
Wool. I really like the blends now. Now that I'm not so much drawn to worsted weight because with worsted weight I cannot find it in a blend. Like it's 100% superwash merino wool.
Mm.
But the lighter
Mhm,
weights tend to have like nylon and
mhm,
wool and there's just something like springy about it. I don't know how to
mhm.
explain it, but that I think that's my favorite is the merino and the nylon.
Yes, yeah. I think that is thrown in there for sock knitting
It is.
or
Yeah.
crocheting for because the nylon helps um, the structure of a sock hold up better. But yeah, that's it's
Yeah.
a nice. It's great for things other than socks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite hook size or brand or like one you're always going back to?
I am a ridiculously tight crocheter, so I'm working
Hmm.
on it, I'm working on it. So, I would say an eye hook is just my go-to, and,
Mhm,
Furl's Odyssey hooks. I have always liked metal hooks,
mhm,
but I was having a lot of hand trouble. I started out with Susan Bates, just like the straight
mhm,
metal, I didn't know any better, and I was having a lot of hand trouble, and a friend of mine, was telling me about her situation and that she uses the Furls Odyssey exclusively, and I was like, "Oh, they're expensive, I don't know." And
mhm,
finally, I got one and I tried one, and I pretty much use them exclusively unless I'm working with bulky weight yarn, and I'll use, like, their Streamline or a
mhm.
Clover, but for the most part, like, I or H hook and yeah.
Yep, yep. I was exactly the same way. I was like, "Oh, I don't know about these fancy hooks. They're so expensive." But that was my experience too. They
Yeah.
are well worth the money.
I have
And I
Yeah.
yeah,
I have
love them.
definitely leaned more towards quality versus quantity now.
Yeah.
I know when I first started out, I was like, I want all the yarn, I want all the hooks. And now it's just like, if I'm going to spend a lot of time doing this, one, I don't want to be in pain. And two, I want the best quality that I can afford right now.
Yeah. When I first started crocheting, I loved knitting with bamboo needles. And so I thought I'm going to get bamboo crochet hooks. And I went on Amazon and I literally got like 15 hooks for $10. And
Same.
they're just like bamboo sticks. Um, and and I worked with those for a very long time. But I agree, if you can afford a little higher quality, it can make a big difference in your enjoyment.
Really. It's like you don't have to work as hard for your stitches. It
Yes.
just glides so nicely.
Yes. Yep. I absolutely agree. What's your favorite thing to drink while you work?
Um, I would have to say unsweet tea. I drink basically water, unsweet tea, and coffee. That's about all I drink. So I'd have to say unsweet tea.
What's your favorite color?
Oh, that's so hard.
Or
I
five?
love all yeah, or 20. I wanna say I go through seasons. I think, like, all-time favorite color would
Mhm.
have to be, like, turquoise or teal. I love, love that. But right now I'm going through like this blushy pink phase. Like I'm obsessed with all things blushy pink. So yeah,
I love it. Do you find your color preferences change with the seasons?
they do. Like about the only time I'm going to use mustard is in the fall. Like I'm not a big yellow person, but something about the leaf change and all of a sudden I'm like mustard, burnt orange, like I want like cranberry colors, those deep,
Mhm.
rich, earthy tones. And then like in springtime, you'll see a little bit more of like neutrals and like pastels, which is very, very rare for me. It's like that kind of goes out of my system quickly. So my
Mhm.
but you'll always see teal, turquoise, purple, and pink. Like I'm always gonna have those in my colorways no matter what season.
Mhm.
But for the like expanding my horizons, it's seasonal.
Yes, yes. I am always drawn towards the teals and the purples and the blues. So yeah.
Mhm.
What is your favorite season?
Fall. I love fall. So before this business, I was a photographer and
Oh.
I loved fall because it's just I like to use natural light and natural settings. And I loved fall. It gave the best natural backdrops. People's skin just glowed differently in that, that warm sunlight. So I fall has always been my favorite.
I love it. Are you a book or a podcast person?
Before I started crocheting, I was a huge book reader. I wanted the physical book. I could not
Mhm.
put them down. And then it was like I started crocheting. I'm like, well, I don't want to give up my crochet time for books. So now I am Audible and podcasting. Yep.
Yes. Um, I am an extremely slow reader. And so I have found that audiobooks are like the best because I can crochet and I can listen and they read way faster than I do.
Oh, yes. And, the other part was, like, before when I tried to listen to an audio book, I just couldn't next thing I know, I'm, like, thinking about, "Huh, I wonder what I need to do tomorrow." And then I'm like, "Oh, well, they've been talking for 20 minutes and I missed it." But when I'm working with my hands, it's like my ears work better. So I can really enjoy podcasts or, audiobooks now when I'm crocheting or knitting. Yeah.
Do you have a podcast you'd recommend?
Well, I actually have my own podcast with another indie dyer. Um, you know, Community over competition is something that is near and dear to my soul. And my friend Cheryl and I talk all the time and we're like, what better way to like show, like you can talk about community, over competition all the time, but can you walk the walk? And we're just like, we're technically, not really technically, but from a
Mhm.
lot of people from the outside looking in, we're competitors.
Mhm.
And so we started a podcast together. It's called Maker's Gonna Sell. And I just love it because it's like we just have a conversation and we would just want to help other women that want to start a business or just believe in themselves because really like you can feel like you need to like, know all these things or you can almost feel like you're set up for failure before you ever start and we just want to encourage you that like you already have what you need to be successful inside of you and we just want to help them see that. But another podcast I would recommend is I just went blank. I love listening to Jennifer Allwood. Um
Okay.
and why am I going blank? Hmm. It'll come back to me. I just totally went blank. I'm like, I can't even think now. I really listen to a lot of them. So,
Yes, I love a good podcast. And when I started off, it was like there was not enough to fill my time. Like I'd only found a
mm,
couple that I really liked, and like, they weren't putting out episodes every day. So what was I going to do? And now it's like I have so many that I love that it's like I can't find the time to
yes,
listen to all of them.
exactly. And I listen to a lot more business. Like I was always one of those
Mhm.
like I wanted to hear a story and stuff like that, but I'm definitely more business or like motivation and things like that. So I it's funny how our tastes change over time. Like I
Mhm.
never would have dreamed that this was something that I would listen to, but I really really enjoy it.
Yeah. I find that my podcasts are like my whips. I need some variety. There are
Yeah.
some podcasts that I know are going to like bring up all the emotions and the self-help, and there are podcasts that are going to be like um the all the business motivation and will get me like all fired up to just do something new or try something or keep going with my business. And then they're the ones that are just like the hilarious stories, or
Yes.
do a couple science. I listened to a finance podcast. I would
Oh,
never have thought I would be the type of
yeah.
person to listen. They're like Harvard finance professors, and they just talk about like the global economy and stuff. Would never have thought that I would listen to that, but I find it very fascinating.
That is fascinating. I even listened to some of Dave Ramsey's podcasts and things like that. Like I just went on this, like I want to listen to everything and just kind of like, went around and now I have my favorites, but it is neat just to, I don't know, diversify your mind. It really helps. So
Yeah. And podcasts are such low commitment. Like if you just decide like that's not for me, you delete it from your feed and then you
yeah.
move on to other things.
Yeah, and I love that you can speed them up. Like, I don't think I can recognize anybody's voices anymore because I have them on like a 1.5 speed, um,
Uh-huh.
which, oh my gosh, like trying to go back and listen to, because sometimes Cheryl and I will go listen to our podcast to, just like, okay, did we actually, because you have this thing after we get done recording. I was like, wow, that was a train wreck. Like, I probably didn't make any sense. Like, I don't even know what happened. And because you just get like this adrenaline rush. And it's
Mhm.
like I get stuck on one thing and that's like all I can say. Like I can't get past it. It's like I need somebody to bop me in the back of the head and be like, okay, next, please. And so like sometimes we'll go and we'll listen to that. And oh my goodness, me on 1.5 times speed. I'm just like, oh, Nikki. Like it's so funny.
I love it. That's funny. My husband listens to things at 1.5 speed, and there are a couple people that I'm just like, you can't do that around me. Like it's overstimulating to my
Yep.
brain to hear that person, specifically their voice and the way they talk at one
Mhm.
and a half speed. I feel anxious just listening to
Yes.
it.
Oh my God. I thought I was the only one. That is so funny. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Same.
I don't even care what they're saying, but it's giving me anxiety to
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
it.
That is hilarious. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's funny. All right. Are you a sweet or a salty snack person?
I love sweets. I can't have them in my house. I cannot. I do not. Like, it's so funny because when my husband met me, like, I don't drink, I call it pop still. It's still the Yankee and me calling it pop. I don't drink pops, but I love them. So I don't have them in my house. Every once in a while I'll have a bad day and my husband's like, "Do you need anything from the store?" I'm like, "Bring me chocolate." And he knows, get me like one chocolate bar. Don't buy me
Mhm,
a pack of chocolates because I can't stay out of them. I love sweets. But I can appreciate salty food too. So
mhm. Yeah. My family just came to visit over the Easter weekend and same thing. They were like, we're going to have sandwiches. Where are the chips? And I was like, can't keep chips in the house. We're
same.
going to have pizza. What about the soda? Can't keep soda in the house.
Mhm.
I just banish it, or yeah, some certain things I'll eat it all if it's here. So
Yeah.
I just don't even keep it. But yeah, I agree. There are
That
times
is
that like you just need that one little
so
bump to
funny.
get you through a bad day.
Yes, yes, and it's so funny because my husband, he charges a tax when he has to go to the store unsupervised. He has a tax, and usually it's some type of chips, and he's a whole foot taller than me. So what he'll do is he'll come home, like, and I don't know how he does it. He's like a ninja. I'll be back dyeing yarn or something, and he'll come in with the groceries. I'm like, "Do you need any help?" "No, honey, I got it." And he'll put them up in the top of the pantry, and I don't even know they're there because I can't see them unless I leave, like, the pantry door open and I'm, like, across the house,
Right,
then I can
stand way
see it, and I'm
back.
like, "How long have those chips been up there?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Mhm." He's like, "That was the tax for sending me to the store without help." Oh my goodness.
I love it. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, my husband has a tax, but he doesn't even know it. So I don't send him to the store because he's much more prone to like the, ooh, that sounds good. Ooh, that sounds good. Ooh, that
Yeah.
sounds good. And then he
Yeah.
comes home and I'm like, what is all of this
Yeah.
stuff that you're now gonna leave me at home alone all day?
Yep.
Me trying to avoid eating all of it.
Oh, that's so funny. Yep.
I love it. Too funny. All right, which is worse, swatching or weaving in ends?
Oh. I think weaving in ends because I have grown to appreciate a swatch because even like when designing, like it limits the amount of yarn chicken you're gonna have to play. Like,
Mhm.
and I kind of like math. So it's really fun to do a swatch and decide from there, like, okay, I'm probably gonna need about this much yarn, and if this many stitches is going to give me this width, and I love like the math part of it. So I have learned to appreciate a swatch, but weaving in the ends, I'm a tuck and go girl. I will tuck those ends in and rock that cow or rock whatever. Even hats, I had one hat I wore every winter for like 2 months, and there was times like I would feel the little string come down. I was like, whoops, tuck that back in. Kind of like, when you're crazy show and you're like, ooh, let me tuck the crazy back in for a minute. Let me calm down.
Oh goodness, I love it. Too funny. Too funny. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. It's been so much fun getting to know you better and just chatting today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's so nice to like see more of the personality behind the account. You know what I mean? So it's been
Mhm.
lovely chatting with you and getting to know you. So thank you. I'm just honored to be a guest on your YouTube channel. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for I always say I do these very selfishly because I just enjoy them so much that if nobody ever watched them, I would still be content doing these because I just have so much fun getting to know people and hearing about their journeys and it was great. We are very similar people, which I
Yes,
am
I
not
love
surprised by
it.
because every time you say something funny on your social media, I'm like, it's my kind of person.
Yes, yes. I remember a reel. That's kind of how like you stuck out in my like I was attracted to your flat lays because I love your pictures and I love your designs. You just do a gorgeous, gorgeous job. And I remember one of your reels. I don't remember what it was, but you made me laugh so much. I was like, she is my people. Oh goodness.
Yes, I have a sister, and we have very similar senses of humor. And our husbands are just like shaking their heads. I'm like, it's fine. You don't have to understand.
Yeah,
We
we
got
think
each
we're
other.
funny, and that's what's important.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll definitely chat again soon.
Yes, yes. All right, bye.
Bye bye. Oh my goodness, another wonderful chat. I am always so blessed to have creatives come and chat with me, whether they are designers or yarn dyers. I just always learn so much and just enjoy a deeper look into who they are and what they do. I hope you enjoyed it too. I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel, like this video, share it with a friend that you think might enjoy this as well. There are lots of links in the description below to Nikki's shops and stuff. You really have to check out her yarn and all the beautiful designs she's made with it. Really, really gorgeous stuff. And if you don't want to miss out on anything SEK Handmade related, there are links to subscribe to my email and follow in all the places. Thank you so much for joining us today, and happy crafting.